The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz with Veterans in Politics. My God, Jim, we're starting on time today. It's been a while since we started.
First time for anything.
Yeah, we were actually early.
Yeah. Wow.
Pretty impressive.
I just want to let everybody know that we're at Worldwide Digital Broadcasting. We're no longer with, what's that other place called? I forgot.
Me too.
All right.
So
we're no longer with
important.
them. So just want everybody to know. And we're gonna have two extraordinary guests today. We're gonna have Danny the Man Tarkanian, who's running for Congressional District Number 3, and we're gonna have Sean, I Kick Your Butt in Court Connell, who's a Nevada attorney. I just gave them nicknames, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
You like those?
I liked both of them.
Oh, cool. So what's going on? Any rants?
You know, I don't really think it's necessarily a rant. It's just kind of interesting that for the listeners that don't know, my mom is, she's a registered Democrat, and neither one of my parents were really that excited about politics one way or the other. Right. So maybe that's why I got involved. And really watch politics. But just watching it, I tried to turn the Republican National Convention a few times because there was other stuff I wanted to watch, and she really got mad. She goes, "No, we really need to listen to this." And I was like, yeah, some of it's pretty dry. I don't know. I kind of get bored of politics sometimes. But, I watched it, and one of the things I found really fascinating about it was Trump wasn't my first pick.
Right.
Okay. And it's interesting that Danny's on the show today because his wife, Amy, and I have talked pretty extensively about, the primary and everything. And both of us actually really like John Kasich. Uh-huh. Well, I've kind of don't really care for John Kasich now because, if you're the governor of a state that is hosting the Republican National Convention and you signed a pledge that you would support the nominee and you don't even show up to the Republican National Convention, I think that was a really bad move on John Kasich's part, and I'm really disappointed he didn't do that.
I was going to agree with you. I thought that was horrible that they made Trump sign that pledge, and yet the followers didn't even follow through on that own pledge.
Well, Ted Cruz is another one. I mean, he did the same thing.
Ted Cruz pissed me off.
Political suicide is what I call it. But when I caucused for Donald Trump. Right. Because I wanted a different vision, although he'll say things that are probably not welcome with a lot of people. But, I didn't want a polished politician. I wanted somebody that was raw, somebody that was speaking from the heart, and somebody that doesn't care about what they say, really, like us.
Yeah, pretty much.
The best thing I heard at that convention, because I caucused as well for Donald Trump, was when Eric Trump came on and said, well, he doesn't need the money. You can't buy him. He doesn't need the job. And I was like, finally, someone who's not Hillary Clinton,
right.
a politician, and endorsed, she'll bend over for anybody who pays her.
Yeah.
Ivanka Trump was my favorite out of the Trump kids, just to put that out there.
I liked I actually like Donald Trump Jr. the best. Okay, visually speaking, I'm with you on Ivanka, okay. I thought Donald Trump Jr. actually did the best. But one of the things that was kind of interesting, and, I watch Fox News all the time, so I was listening to their commentary. And one of the things I found fascinating is Tucker Carlson is not necessarily a strong supporter of Donald Trump's. But I think he made a really good point when he said, Donald Trump writes a book about the art of the deal. Mm-hmm. I actually want to see the book about parenting. How many billionaires raise 5 kids that are normal? I mean, these are normal kids. They're good kids. They love their father. They're successful in business.
Right.
I mean, they're well developed, just average people. And that's something that, a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of people that are born to rich parents are not that way. So I think that is what kind of got me the most, is just that, hey, Donald Trump, you can say whatever you want about him, but 3 marriages or whatever, but he's raised 5 very good kids. They love their father and they're very successful at business. And I think that would be a really good role model to lead the country.
Yeah. Christina?
Well, no, I agree. I loved all of his kids. I loved what they said. I love how they each had their own personal antidote and personal stories with their father. And sometimes you hear it, billionaires, they sacrifice a lot of money to have that, but they don't have their family. And his kids are close, and they're close with each other too. They don't put off that sibling rivalry vibe. It's a real family, and I felt for Ivanka and Tiffany both. They got grilled on their father's treatment of women, and no one has said anything to Chelsea Clinton. And I'm just saying, if we're gonna drill Tiffany and Ivanka, someone should probably go and talk to Chelsea too.
Yeah, about Daddy in the Oval Office, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to bring it a little bit home, and I just want to take a moment of silence for Clark County District Court Judge Susan Scan, who was succumbed by cancer and passed away last week. So just take a moment of silence for her. And today's Judge Scan's, I believe, is her funeral today. We have endorsed her in the past. Remarkable jurist, very, very knowledgeable of the bench. And whoever takes her place, they're going to have big shoes to fill. Maybe Sean Connell could put his appointment in for that seat and take Susan Scan's place on that district court bench. We should ask him if he'd do something like that.
Maybe when we see Sean, we'll ask Sean about that.
Yeah. Well, anybody got anything else?
No.
All right. Well, let's take a commercial break, and we're going to come back to Danny Tarkanian. We're going to go to Danny Tarkanian. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz with Veterans of Politics. We're back momentarily with Danny Tarkanian. We are back, folks. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz with Veterans in Politics. We have live, all the way from Cleveland, Danny Tarkanian, congressional candidate for District Number 3. Danny, how you doing today?
Very tired.
All right. Tell us a little bit about you.
My campaign, or the trip?
You in general.
Well, look, one of the things that distinguishes myself against most people running for office here in Southern Nevada is I've lived here most of my life, over 35 years, and my family has been very blessed with what this community has given it. Hopefully the community feels that my family has given a lot back to it also, but we understand the importance of public service, from my father as a basketball coach and all the things that he did outside of it, to the things my mother has done, and as a public servant on the school board and now the city council, to all the different charities my wife and I have been involved in, from the Tark Toy Drive, the Team Focus, Hope for Prisoners programs. We understand the importance of giving back to the community, and I'm taking the next step, and I think the most important step is to get back to Washington, D.C., get rid of the establishment people that have lined their own pockets and took care of the people that are keeping them in office with their campaign donations. And I'll go back there and fight for them and be their voice. And one thing most people that know me will tell you is I'm a fighter. I've been knocked down quite often. I've had quite a few adversities, but I keep coming back tougher than ever.
Could you give us the boundary lines for Congressional District 3?
Yeah, it's basically everything north of Summerlin Parkway and west of Durango until you get to Russell. And then once you get to Russell, we have everything up and down the state, so east and west.
So why do you want to be in public office so bad?
A little bit what I just said. I think it's important to give back to your community as part of what you do in your life. Look, when it's all over and done, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to be able to say, I accomplished? So you walk away and you pass away with $1 billion. What is that going to do for you? Mm-hmm. What did it do for people while you were here? So you walked away with this power and of running a big corporation or what else there is. But you know what? You can really make a difference and a legacy that will have a lasting effect, one that your kids can be proud of, is if you go back to in public service, whether it's a local level, state level, or in Washington, D.C., and you really do things that have a great impact for the people you're representing and have a major influence on their lives. And you do it for them, not for yourself or, as I mentioned, all the special interest groups. To me, I hope that my kids, when I get older and I'm getting ready to take my last breath, they feel the pride of what I accomplished in my life that I felt for my father when he took his last breath.
So let's say we hope you get elected. You are endorsed by veterans in politics. So let's say that you get elected. What's the first thing you plan on doing?
I'm going to take my kids on a drive across the country all the way to Washington, D.C. and find a home and put them up in there. I assume you're asking what am I going to do when I get there. Look, the thing is, I'm not naive to think that I'm one of 435 congressional people in one house of a body of politics, that I'm going to be able to get anything done myself. But I can tell you that I'm going to go back there with certain principles that I'm going to fight for and not let up on. And I think that our government is too big. It's overexpansive. It's infringing upon the sacred individual rights and freedoms that our Constitution has given us, and every administration, Republican and Democrat, has expanded that size of government, taken away more of our freedoms. At some point, we need to fight back and get that changed and reversed, and I'll be that voice. I think we spend way too much money. How can we have a society, a government that represents society, and think it's okay to put our country in a $19 trillion debt, and it's going up almost $1 trillion. It has gone up $1 trillion a year under Obama. What are we doing to our kids, and what we're going, the future of those kids, and what's going to happen to our monetary system? We need somebody back in there that's going to fight to reduce the deficit. And the thing that I've talked about previously, one of the worst things I see in our government is all the special tax breaks and credits and regulations that are passed just to benefit certain special interest groups, ones that are so powerful out there that we're passing things that make them exempt and the rest of the individuals that aren't. And I'm going to give you a good example, and it's one that I have a hard time figuring out how it ever happened and why it hasn't been changed, and that's what the so-called inversions that we're doing with corporations. You have these big corporations like General Electric, one of the most profitable companies in the world for many, many years. They never paid any federal income taxes. What they do is they put their money overseas in one of the some fake subsidiary that they create in a country that has a very low, if any, corporate tax rate, and they hold the money overseas. And then when they get so much money, they petition the U.S. government. They say, "Hey, let us bring it back. We'll create more jobs and improve our businesses if you just let us bring us back for, one time forgiveness sake." Well, what about those hardworking corporations here in the rest of the country that don't have the resources to hide their money overseas, and they're paying the world's highest corporate tax rate, 37%. We're forcing those companies to pay the highest tax rate ever, and we're allowing the bigger companies not to pay any or very little through these inversions. And I think it's completely unfair. It's something that should be changed immediately, and I think would have a substantial benefit for our country as a whole.
Every time you turn on the news now, it looks like terrorism is going rampant. What's your plan to protect Americans here in the United States?
One of the most important, if not the most important function of the federal government is to the welfare and security of the citizens of this country, and that's where our resources should be placed. We spend so much money in other areas that the federal government shouldn't be involved in, but we should be fully funding whatever it takes to stop terrorism. And as many people on the right say, we need to take the fight to them because they're taking it to us right now. We're dilly-dallying around, for lack of a better phrase, in Syria and Iraq, and when we should have took them out a while ago. What I would have done if I was president, obviously, that's
your next step.
Yeah, my next step. It's easy for me to say, is what I'm trying to say, as opposed to someone who's sitting in those shoes. But you hate to. But one of the things that's so obvious is you had the ISIS take down a Russian jet. You had ISIS go into France and commit that really horrendous atrocities and killed all the people there. You had England come out and say, we'll do whatever it takes to get rid of ISIS. Then we had the San Bernardino killings here in the United States. We could have got the world's most powerful elite legions together, and all of our countries combined could have went into Iraq and Syria and just wiped out ISIS. It probably would have took a couple of weeks, maybe a month at the most. You could have had every major country in there willing to do it. But Obama, one, he didn't reach out to him. Two, they probably wouldn't listen to him because I don't think they like him or they trust him or they have faith in him. And instead, what we did was we upped some more bombings, so we were keeping it in the sky and bombing people. So it's allowed them to send out their terrorist cells to all the different parts of the world. And they've said they have all these terrorist cells in Europe. They have them here in the United States. I will tell you, my mom's a city councilwoman here in Las Vegas, and she's been briefed by Homeland Security, and they've told her they believe there's ISIS terrorist cells here in Clark County, which makes us very, very scared, particularly with the amount of tourism that come into the country, into Las Vegas every day. So we allowed them to expand in other areas of the world, and they're taking the fight to us, so we should be taking the fight to them. And I would be a big proponent of that. But I'm not a proponent to do it alone. I'm a proponent to get all the other countries involved that all these things are happening to also.
Jim?
Hey, Danny, one of the things that when we were talking a little bit before we came on air was one of the things that you said is sometimes gets thrown out, perennial candidate. Well, and I'm going to kind of answer the question for you in my take on it. And I've heard that about you before. But just so the listeners know, so this is full disclosure, they can call you perennial candidate if they want. But the Danny Tarkanian that I know I ran for Assembly District 8 against Barbara Buckley. Everybody knew there was no way in the world I could win that.
Yeah.
But I had a fundraiser, and you showed up. And to me, that just spoke a lot about your character. So one of the things when they bring up perennial candidate, I'm like, but you got to understand, like, perennial candidate means they'll just run for any office no matter what. If you look at the offices that you've ran for, none of those were going to be easy races. Every single one of them was tough. So I think it speaks to your character that you're willing to challenge tough opponents because you know what's right. I mean, you won the primary. Congratulations. Michael Roberson was not an easy person to defeat in a primary, and you did it. So what's your plans to win the general?
Well, let me answer the first part a little bit more we can put those races I was in perspective, right, since we want to bring them up. It's not only a perennial candidate, it's not just somebody who run for any office. It's usually somebody who runs and they get beat substantially, and they're not a factor in any race. Right. Every race I was in, first of all, I won 4 out of my 5 Republican primaries. This is my 5th one I'm in. So I've beaten some tough people. I beat the former Clark County Republican chair, Brian Scroggins, who had every endorsement of every elected official in the state, and I beat him in 2006. I beat the most popular state senator in Nevada in 2012, and Barbara Sagaski in a tough primary. And then I beat the majority leader in the state state Senate, who's endorsed by every major elected official except Joe Heck, and outspends me 4-1, and has the ability to raise as much money as he wants because of his position. I won all those primaries. Then every one of my general elections, I made up at least 6.5% or more of the voter registration deficiency. You say that these races were tough. They were big races. Not only that, they were in horrible districts. Right. In 2004, I ran for the state Senate against the incumbent state senator in a district that was 18.5% more Democrats. That Bush lost by 20% in the presidential election. I lost by 7%. I substantially outperformed Bush. I don't know how anybody could say that's not a great accomplishment. I ran in 2006 against the former governor's son, who outraised me 4-1 in the state senate. And the governor's son was the governor was very popular. And quite honestly, that's the one race I probably shouldn't have ran in, but I was already in the race, and he got in the race. It's tough to beat any Ross Miller and Bob Miller's the governor's son. Now, Adam Laxalt beat him by 0.5% in the biggest Republican sweep ever in the last election. And as good a candidate as Laxalt is, with as much money as Laxalt had, he almost lost in the one year that every Republican won. In 2012, I lost, as I mentioned, I won the primary and lost to the first black U.S. congressman in the country's history on the same time that a black president is running for re-election in a district that had the highest African-American percentage of any district in the state. And the district was 14.5% more Democrats. I lost by 8. So I made up 6.5% in that. And again, as there was few people outside of the hardcore Republicans would have thought that I was going to beat Roberson. I just didn't beat him. I beat him good. And so I when people can say what they want about perennial candidates, it doesn't bother me. And I won't remember the quote, but one of my favorite quotes is the one by Teddy Roosevelt when he starts talking about being in the arena. It's not the fact. It's the fact that you're in there, you fight, and you're bloodied, and you get back up, and you come back and fight again. That is a sign of a man. It's not the fact that you've had some defeats. I've been very blessed to be involved in a competitive environment my whole life because my dad was a basketball coach. I saw him lose some very disappointing losses. A little bit like what I've done. He had Long Beach State, which was a state school that had never had a winning season before he got there, and took UCLA to during their 10-year run of NCAA championships and lost to them by 2, the closest game UCLA ever had in the playoffs. Do they call him? Would they call my dad a loser after that game? He came here and took UNLV's program, and in his fourth year, lost to North Carolina with 4 Olympians and the Olympic coach Dean Smith, and they lost to them by 1 point, I believe. I don't think anyone would call him a loser. And I took some tough races and I lost some tough races, but those are all temporary setbacks. You don't lose until you quit trying, and I haven't quit trying.
Danny, I've known you most of my life, and I've been very blessed to do so. And I know you, and I'm very happy to live in your district. But for
I'm happy to have you there, believe me.
For the listeners
Are you going to vote for him?
He already knows the answer. But for the listeners out there, what is one thing that you can say, like if you really wanted to gun it in their home, that sets you apart from your competitor?
There's a clear distinction in this race. Listen, I am going back to Washington, D.C. because I see what's happened with our career politicians and how they're destroying our country because of their self-interest and wanting to preserve their power and position. And you see that's in the presidential nominee for the Democrat Party. She will lie to the public. She will, in most people's eyes, commit crimes that put our nation at risk just so she could move forward in her quest to become president. My opponent, so I'm running because I want to shake the establishment up. And as I say, I think it's time we send a true rebel to Washington, D.C. to shake things up. She's a complete opposite. She was Harry Reid's 6th choice at best to run for this seat. Harry Reid has anointed her now as a candidate. She has stated on her one appearance to the Senior Center that Shelley Berkeley and Harry Reid are grooming her to take over their spot. She's going to be the same. If you liked what Harry Reid did for this state over the 30-plus years he's been in Washington, D.C., you're going to vote for Jackie Rosen because she's the chosen one of Harry Reid.
Danny, tell us a little bit about the convention. You were out there for a few days.
Yeah, I went out there, only saw the last 2.5 days. I got there late on Tuesday night. And I just thought those are things that you don't experience much of a lifetime. There's incredible experiences, just excitement, enthusiasm. I've been to 4 Final Fours in basketball, been to some great sport events. Nothing compares to the excitement and emotions in a convention. And this past week was as good, if not better, than any I've seen. And I think the party as a whole is much more united than the country, the liberal media wants you to believe. There are some people that obviously aren't going to jump on the Trump bandwagon, at least not to this point. But there's a vast majority of others that say, hey, we got to get Trump elected. The last thing we can do is put someone such as Hillary Clinton in the White House for another 4 to 8 years. And I think you see that party coming together. The one thing I was disappointed in, and you guys discussed this earlier, is how a guy who's a governor of the state, John Kasich, who promises to support whoever the nominee is, and then you lose, you don't even show up to the convention. And worse than that, you have another person who runs for the presidency in Ted Cruz, who also signs the document saying he'll support whoever the nominee is, and then he loses, and then he comes to the convention and won't endorse the candidate. To me, my dad always taught me, you win with class, lose with dignity. Now, I've been very dignified on my 4 races. At times I get a little classy. But those 2 candidates need to get some class because all they did was hurt the party and violate their bond, and I thought that was wrong. I thought Trump gave a great speech. It was a long speech, but I don't think anybody got tired, at least people that care about our country got tired of listening to him. He talked about the problems we're facing and how we're going to change those problems. I think we're moving in the right direction with him as a candidate now, and I look forward to him being victorious and me helping, me working in Congress to fight for some of those things he talked about.
Well, Danny, I want to thank you for showing up to this program because I know you went from airport to here, right? That's about right.
Oh my goodness, it's been I have not slept in 2 days except on the plane. I've been traveling for I think it's been close to 18 hours, but it was hard to get back from Cleveland.
So you're an awesome athlete, so aren't you used to sleep?
I'm an old washed up athlete at this point.
So what would you want to tell the listeners why they should go to the polls and vote for you?
Yeah, you're going to have a simple choice. You're going to have somebody who was chosen to be their replacement in Washington, D.C. Harry Reid has chosen Jackie Rosen to replace him and to run and vote on the policies he voted on. I'm going to go back to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be a true rebel. I'm going to fight the establishment and do what's best for my constituents. I'm going to be a voice for my constituents. Look, if people can criticize me losing some elections, nobody can criticize the fight that I have in me or the determination and perseverance that I've shown.
Could we have your point of contact?
Yeah, my campaign website,
phone number.
Well, I don't know my campaign. I know my personal cell. I'll probably keep that to myself. But the website's TARK, TARK 4 FOR Congress. So tark4congress.com.
And do you have any events coming up that we can probably attend or cash?
Well, we don't at this time. We're just right now getting our staff hired for the general election. We've expanded what we had in the past. We're building our outreach, grassroots outreach. We have somebody out here who's going to start working on volunteers. We'll start putting some events together after the 2 conventions and the Olympics. Right now, most of the people are concerned about the conventions, and then the Olympics are coming up, so there's going to be a little hard to get their attention. Right now, I got to be on the phone raising money. I got to build my infrastructure and be ready to take off in the middle of August.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on the program. We really appreciate it. That's Danny Tarkanian, congressional candidate for District Number 3. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz with Veterans of Politics. Don't go away, folks. We're going to have Sean Connell, who is a candidate for Justice of the Peace. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Was it Justice of the Peace, right?
It was Justice Court Department 3 was the
Right.
one that I ran for.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I originally grew up in Iowa and went to college in Milwaukee, then went back to Iowa for law school. And in 2000, when I graduated, I moved out here, passed the 2000 bar exam, and have been practicing law in Las Vegas since then. Have also done a little bit up in northern Nevada when I had cases, but for the most part, been practicing law in Las Vegas for 16 years.
What kind of law are you practicing?
Right now, well, I'm actually in a little bit of a transition for the next week. Doing mostly complex civil litigation, do a lot of work for excess carriers. So it's cases that are valued over $1 million. We get brought in for the second layer of insurance. In the past, I've done a lot of criminal defense, a little bit of bankruptcy, and then just general civil litigation. I'm actually switching firms because I was unfortunate enough not to advance past the primary. I had a conversation with a guy that I used to work with that started a firm and needs help. So he asked me if I'd come be his partner. So August
Very
1st,
cool.
I'm going to work with him. He does civil defense as well as a little bit of plaintiff's work, and then I'm going to help him kind of build the criminal defense side of the practice.
So you do any pro bono stuff?
I do. I've been doing some pro bono for disabled veterans for little under a year now, I guess. I volunteer on the board for a charity, and one of the gentlemen that is involved with the charity is a veteran that does a lot of veterans outreach. So he contacts me a lot of times when there's individuals that have small, minor federal cases, because it normally happens at the VA, so it's on federal land, and they can't really afford an attorney. It's not a big deal, but it impacts them differently than it would a civilian.
Right.
So I will try and get involved whenever I can. Some of it is misdemeanor, petty offense, criminal defense stuff, and then there's also a couple of civil issues I've been dealing with as well.
So if Christina decides to beat somebody up, you'll defend her?
It's always me.
I'll see if I can't keep her out of jail.
Well, I appreciate the help.
So you ran for a judge once before. What department was that?
In 2014, I ran for District Court Department 25.
Okay, and who's in there now?
Judge Delaney is the incumbent that I ran against.
Okay. So why do you want to be in the position of your honor?
It's part of it is it's something that I've always wanted to do. Part of it is it's something I know I'd be good at, and I think that there are a lot of judicial departments in Southern Nevada, and there are a lot of judges that are really good at their job, and there's some that aren't so good at their job, and I just tried to get elected and get in there and be one of the good ones. So I was kind of hoping that I'd have an opportunity to improve upon some things that have happened in some of the courtrooms, and I just am committed to being fair.
Right.
And I think that that's what you need from judges, someone that's knowledgeable about the law, which I'm confident that I am, and is willing to make hard decisions and apply the law as it's supposed to be applied, rather than getting emotions involved or any...
Being biased.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you care about the city, obviously in Las Vegas, but what brought you out to Las Vegas, being from the Midwest?
Well, I like to say it's that you don't have to shovel sunshine, but it was actually when I was in law school, there was a group of guys in my class that were looking at starting their own firm, and they researched different mid to large cities and looked at cost of living, the job market, a lot of other factors to try and decide where to go. And Las Vegas was the clear choice because this was back in 2000. It was booming. They only offered the bar exam once a year, so if you passed it, there was work. Because the demand, there was much more demand for attorneys than there were licensed attorneys because of the low pass rate and only offering it once a year. They have since started to offer it twice a year, so there are more attorneys getting licensed every year. But I looked around at the job opportunities I had in the Midwest. There was a couple of small firms. It wasn't anything that was interesting to me, and I decided I'll go to Las Vegas, give it a shot. If I don't like it, I can always move back. And 16 years later, I haven't found an excuse to leave.
It's okay. My parents are from Wisconsin. They've now been here for 36 years. They don't shovel sunshine either.
Right. My girlfriend of, I guess, what is it now, 14 years is from just outside of Milwaukee, and I went to college in Milwaukee. So I spent a little time in Wisconsin myself.
Hey, Sean. So when Steve asked you, why you want to be Your Honor, and then and you talked about that it's something you would be good at, and then but I want to talk to you a little bit more about the thought process on what department you're going to run for. So when you want to decide which department you're going to run for, and you said, what kind of research do you do? Is it just based off what colleagues have said about that judge if you're running against an incumbent, or is it just your own personal belief, or is there some research involved, or is it just the journal review, or?
Well, I ran twice, and the answer is different for both times. So let me start with 2014. Because it is something that I've always wanted to do, I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought and had not done anything to prepare for it in 2014. But I saw that there was a week left to put your name on the ballot, and I was like, you know what? It's $150. I don't have a shot, but why not? See what happens. It'll be a good experience. It is something I want to do, so let me at least figure out what it's all about. So I went down and looked at all of the departments for referee election in 2014. It was the first time that they synced up all the district court seats, so I could have picked any of them. And I knew that there were, I believe...
52?
Huh?
There were 52 at that
Right. No, I would say there was either 2 or 3 that were open, non-family, civil criminal.
Okay.
I know... was it Department 2 and I think 22. There was a couple that were open seats because incumbents weren't seeking re-election. So my initial thought was to sign up for one of those. And then I saw that there was 4 or 5 people that had already signed up for all of those. And since I didn't know what I was doing and it was more about gaining the experience, I thought trying to survive a primary was kind of a dumb idea. So I looked for one where there was nobody challenging the incumbent. And then after that, then I looked and saw, okay, well, which of the incumbents that don't have a challenger do have a bad score in the RJ's poll? Because at least, give me some reason.
Right.
So I looked at that, and so that's how I settled on Department 25. And when people asked why I chose that one, my response was that,
The RJ told you to.
No, it's that we elect our judges in Nevada, and the only way the system works is if someone challenges the incumbent.
Sure.
Now, people might not want to get rid of the incumbent. They might not think I'm the best candidate, but at least I want people to have a choice. And if they decide they want to keep the judges there, that's fine, as long as they do it for the right reasons. You make an informed decision, I will never be upset about who you vote for. So that's how I ended up picking Department 25 in 2014. In this year, when I went and looked, there were 3 judges that I have talked to a number of different attorneys about and had heard that no one liked them. They were doing a terrible job. So then I started researching those 3 on my own. I did look at the RJ.
Who was the 3?
I ran against one of them. I'll just leave it at that. So, and one,
you know me, I like to ask those questions.
And one other one has already lost an incumbent that got knocked out in the primary. So that was 2 of the 3.
Oh, you're going to keep us guessing on the 3rd?
Yes. So I started looking at those 3 and trying to decide between them. I went and researched on my own, what type of rulings they were issuing, how their calendar was moving along, whether or not they were efficient, whether or not they were actually getting things right, what kind of articles were out there about the conduct in their courtroom, and then went and talked to other people about their opinions of them. So after that, I narrowed it down to 2 choices, and it was the 2 that I thought were not doing a good job and also susceptible to losing.
Right.
And based on that research, I think I did a pretty good job because one of them's out and the other one looks like she is going to be out in November. Then it just came down to which of the 2. And the race that I chose, I knew it was going to be difficult because I was going to be running against another challenger with a lot of family connections and a lot of money, but also a lot younger than me and a lot less experienced. In the other race, there was an attorney that had a lot of connections and a lot more experience. So I looked at it and said, if I'm going to win one of the two, it's going to be this one. I think both of these incumbents are probably going to get knocked off. So that's how I settled on Department 3.
So, assuming you run again, what experience have you learned, and what do you think you're going to do different next time?
Well, unfortunately, this time, short of robbing an armored car, I'm not sure there's anything I could have done differently. But it's one of those things that I did a lot better this time than I did 2 years ago. And it definitely was a learning experience. I've tried to be active in the community. I've tried to foster relationships. And I just try to be genuine when I talk to people. And I found that, as I get out more, I talk to more groups, more individuals. People can kind of tell that I'm being honest, I'm being genuine. If they like what I have to say, that's good. If not, it's still me. And so I'm not going to try and be fake. I'm not going to try and cater to people. I'm sure I will run again at some point. I did it in 2014, 2016, thinking I might take 2018 off and then keep an eye towards 2020. But I think the biggest thing that I would do differently is just try to put more work in ahead of time, which is what I did in 2016, and I saw the benefit of that. So even though I probably won't run again until 2020, I'll probably start campaigning tomorrow.
But do you live in the city of Las Vegas?
I'm actually in Spring Valley, but it's Las Vegas Township.
Because I was going to tell you that there's some muni races up next year.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I was kind of thinking maybe take a year or two. As switching jobs, I want to kind of devote myself to the new firm and try and help it grow and make sure that I reward the gentleman for giving me the opportunity, because he's gone out on a limb to kind of make some sacrifices for his own good in order to get me in there. Because I originally said, I'm not sure it's something I'm interested in doing, and he basically said, just name it, whatever you want, you can have it. I need your help. I want you to come in here. I trust you, because he's somebody that I trained 10, 11 years ago. So
What about an appointment?
I probably will put in for an appointment, just because it'd be silly not to.
Right.
I think that there'll be a lot of stiff competition, because there's obviously a lot of people that are interested in going down that route, and so there'll be a lot of names, but I can't see any reason not to fill out the paperwork.
Well, there's Susan Scan.
Right.
And then there's Nancy Seda.
Yeah, I don't think I'll put in for Judge Seda's. I don't think I'm quite ready for the Supreme Court. And, it's unfortunate what happened with Judge Scan, obviously. But prior to that, when Judge Seda, or Justice Seda, announced that she was not going to be staying in that position, I thought about it, and there's going to be somebody. Most likely one of the three appellate judges will end up putting in for the Supreme Court seat. So it'll take a while for that appointment to occur.
I don't think so. The reason I said it, because they're all up for election this year. It'll be kind of too soon, I think, if they're putting for an appointment when they're all on the ballot in November.
Yeah, although, I mean, you think about it, and the experience for being a Supreme Court justice working at the appellate level is kind of the best thing. Obviously, we haven't had that in the past, so you can go from the district court level to the Supreme Court level and be successful, because they haven't had any choice in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were some district court judges that put in for the Supreme Court seat.
And that leaves another vacancy.
And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, well, somebody, assuming it was one of the appellate ones, if one of the appellate judges gets appointed to the Supreme Court, then somebody's going to get appointed to take the appellate seat, and it'll probably be one of the district court judges. If it happened to be from Clark County, that creates another opening. But now, to go through 3 appointments, you're talking about 2020 anyway, and so you'd be running in the election for 2020. So I think that, it'll probably, it's not going to be less than close to a year before somebody gets appointed to Judge Scan's seat. So, I mean, the process normally takes quite some time, because they'll have the period when you could submit the applications, and assuming they'll probably get, 12 to 15 applications, weed through all of them, interview everybody, pick their 3, send them up to the governor, interview all 3 of them, make the appointment, and even when they announce the appointment, it still generally takes a couple months before they get sworn in and take the bench.
I'm surprised you're not a hearing master or a ref on the bench.
Yeah, and I may look into that. It's like I said, that was one of those things that going into 2014, I hadn't given any thought to any of those types of
Right.
things. Those were things that I considered going into this election, but I think that there wasn't enough time to do everything I wanted to do, which is also part of the reason why I think it would be better off to wait till maybe 2020 before I tried again.
So, Sean, what do you think the number one what's the most difficult thing that or the biggest challenge that you see with the court system here in Southern Nevada, and what changes would you like to see?
I think the biggest thing is the efficiency, and that's kind of a cheating answer because there's a lot of things that fall under that.
Right.
I mean, you've got the overcrowding in the jails, overcrowding in the courts, which plays into the efficiency just because of the sheer number of cases that they have to process. But then you also have judges that contribute to that because they either don't show up on time, they don't issue orders on time,
They don't read the briefing.
they don't prepare ahead of time, so they're learning the case while they're on the bench. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the efficiency part of it, but I do think that that's one of the biggest problems is that just the sheer number of cases and the manner in which they're conducted. As far as how I would want to try and fix that or change that would be read everything ahead of time, be prepared, show up on time, and you want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard,
Right.
but you also kind of have to have an eye on the clock. And there's some judges that will have a defendant stand in front of them, and after they've gone through everything, they'll let the defendant stand there and talk for a while. And it sounds like maybe you're kind of denying them the opportunity to speak, but really there's no reason for that defendant to be speaking.
Right.
That's what they have an attorney for,
Yeah.
assuming they're represented.
Right.
And so it's so much easier for a judge to turn to the attorney and say, do you have anything to add? Have you spoken to your client? If they say no, say, well, go out in the hall and talk to them when you're ready, come back.
Right.
We don't need to stand here and do it right now. And, the defendant may have something they want to say that they think is really important that's really completely irrelevant, has nothing to do with the case, has nothing to do with the charges, has nothing to do with sentencing.
Right.
And the attorney may know that. So they're going to be like, no, we already have an agreement in place. We're ready to go, move forward. And you don't want to deny them the opportunity to speak, but everybody else is sitting there listening to them, and a lot of people are paying their attorneys
Time's
hundreds of
money.
dollars an hour to sit there and listen to that. So it's not really fair to them to do that either. So you just kind of have to keep things moving, and you have to be willing to take a position.
I got a two-part question for you. Let's see if you could answer it before time's up. The first part is, how do you feel about nepotism on the bench? And the second part of the question is, how do you feel about judges taking monies and campaign contributions from law firms and attorneys that are currently appearing before them?
Let me start with the second one first. I think that it's unfortunate that you have to raise money to campaign, but it's just part of the system. And I think that when you're concerned about judges taking money from attorneys that are going to appear before them,
Currently appearing before them.
that the issue is not taking the money. The issue is the judge. Because if you're electing the right people that have the integrity and are there to do the job the right way, it doesn't matter. Because, I've had law firms donate money to me, and I know for a fact that if they appear before me, that buys them nothing.
Right.
It's the law dictates what happens. And so if you have judges with integrity
Right.
that are actually there for the right reasons and are willing to follow the law, then it's not a problem at all.
I'm
Now-
not talking about that they might appear before you. I'm talking that they're currently before you and they gave you a check.
Right, and like I said, I think that it comes down to the integrity of the judge, not necessarily the system of campaign contributions. As far as the nepotism issue, in all parts of society, your family connections play into who you have access to, and that obviously affects the elections, but you still have to go through the process and you still have to get elected. I think that Nevada is growing enough now that it's becoming less of an issue. I know that 20 years ago, certain family names carried a lot more weight than they do now, because there's so many people that have come in from so many different areas of the country that don't really know who all those
Right.
people are. So over time, I think that's becoming diluted. And, again, you just hope that voters will educate themselves about the candidates and vote for someone for a real reason.
Right.
Not just what their name is, not the color of their signs, not how many signs they have. And that's what I always told people when I was campaigning. I'm like, do your research, and if you like my opponent more than me and you want to vote for him, I'm okay with that, as long as you make an informed decision,
Right.
because that's all I ask for.
Well.
So I'm just looking for people to educate themselves about the candidates. Sometimes there's people that have a family name that are great candidates, and sometimes there's some that don't. So you just have to look at them individually and figure out which is which.
So how do we contact you when I beat someone up, essentially? But how do we contact you?
Starting August 1st, you can go to mlolegal.com, and it's the Muehlbauer Law Office. And so just MLO Legal, and there's phone number, address, everything is on the website.
And is there an office to find you at?
Yeah, and I should know the address. It's, I want to say 7915. It might be 7815 West Sahara, Suite 104. But it is the office complex right at Sahara and Buffalo. And if you're familiar with the restaurant Sushi Fever, it's right behind there.
And you give veteran discount?
I will definitely work on that. I have not set up the fee structure with him yet, as far as what my hourly rates are going to be and what I'm going to be doing. But I'll have a lot of freedom. So I definitely will continue to do pro bono work whenever I can.
Right.
And if it's a situation where somebody needs help, I'm always willing to have a conversation, because I want to make sure that people get good representation. And I think of myself as good representation.
Right. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming on the program. We really appreciate it. Folks, that's Sean Connell, Nevada State Attorney, and this is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas, and Christina Ortiz with Veterans in Politics. We'll be back next week, folks, at the Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.